What's up, guys? We're back with another Masters of the Universe Revelation Masterverse review, taking a look at, I don't know if I want to call him the oddball figure in the wave, but he's not as heavy hitter-ish as the rest. We're taking a look at Mossman. So we've got Skeletor, He-Man, evil-lyn. Those are top tier MOTU characters for sure. Mossman is a fan favorite, but he's maybe a rung down or so. But I'm pretty excited to take a look at this guy because he does seem to be a bit of a departure from what we're used to, not just because he's not flocked. He is, of course, in the standard style box for this line, so figure in the window. We've got our Netflix call out, our Revelation call out, our Masterverse call out on the front. You've got some kind of stealthy artwork of him kind of creeping through the shadows on the side. And then the back of the box has our bio for Mossman. You've got him in his natural habitat with a little sneak peek at Beastman and Skeletor behind him, along with some cross-sell for Wave 1. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package are Mossman. So this is a slightly different take on Mossman. I mean, it's not too far-fetched. It's not that different from what you might think a Mossman could be. He's certainly not just a fuzzy green Beastman anymore. But this works, and he's very, kind of Sasquatch swamp thing almost, which, again, it kind of works. So I'm pretty much on board with this overall kind of redesign that they've gone with, and it makes for a pretty interesting figure. He is essentially kind of the same as all the rest in this first wave as well when it comes to construction and articulation, although of course he's a little bit different, but not too much more. So you've got a head that can kind of bobble. It doesn't really do much in terms of, well, anything, honestly, because he's sort of hunched forward and he sort of lurches a little bit. So you can do that sort of tilt up and down slightly. He doesn't really have any side-to-side motion, and then you can rotate, but it looks kind of funny because of how huge his traps are. We've got arms that go out at the shoulders. They rotate, of course. You've got a bicep swivel. We've got double-jointed elbows. They are a little bit more hindered than the others just because of his design, because he's got kind of asymmetrical pieces, basically. So like this side goes a little higher than the left because he's got like a vine that comes up on the bicep there. So it does kind of restrict it a little bit. You've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. Of course, these are pinless as well, I should note, just because. Then you've got a little bit of tilt up and down at the torso cut, the diaphragm cut. He's got bobble side to side. And then that is a slightly rotating piece, but not too much. Most of your rotation is going to be at the waist itself, so you can go all the way around. Legs go out all the way, so you can do the swamp splits there. They do kick forward, but you do have a rubbery loincloth to contend with. So they go forward all the way, but there's going to be a little resistance. Kick backwards. You do have a thigh cut. We've got double jointed knees. They go back about that far. Again, his design is a little bit different. So he like literally has tree trunk legs. Pinless there as well. And then you do have hinges up there. You've got rotation also. There's not really any rocker. This is where he's truly kind of different because of his design. I mean, he's got these big, wide, flat feet. So a rocker wouldn't work too well. But you do get actual rotation there. And then a little bit of hinge action. So he is very similar to the rest of this wave. I would say he might be among the more restricted in a few areas, but I haven't really had much issue posing him. He's very par for the course in many ways to He-Man and Skeletor. Aesthetically, of course, this guy is a bit of a departure, especially if you want to compare him to just the vintage figure or the classics figure. He is, of course, very different. The biggest thing for this figure is the simple fact that he's not flocked, and I know that seems kind of like a sin to a lot of folks when it comes to Mossman, but I'm not too concerned about it. It's not the biggest deal to me. I would, however, prefer if he was flocked, but it's not a, make or break kind of situation. If anything, it does allow this figure to have a lot of other detail that he otherwise wouldn't have. You wouldn't get all these vines and all of this extra color and all this different sort of layering of forest greens and sort of like, the pea green and then the browns that are all in. We wouldn't get that if he was 100% flocked. So I'm not too upset about that. It's just a different take. If anything, the one thing I think I'm really missing, and it seems so stupid, is that he's not scented. I would love that, because that's just a thing for me when it comes to Master stuff. Like, if Stinkor is not scented, then I'll probably just throw a fit. But, this guy, I wish he had a scent. I wish he was flocked, but neither one is truly going to bother me. I do, however, I do really like this design. There's a ton going on with this figure. I mean, he is sculpted through and through. In the instances with He-Man and Skeletor where I kind of complained about the texture that they have that I don't quite understand on their torsos, this guy can have it everywhere and it makes perfect sense. So he's essentially just like a walking shrub, basically. He's very viney, he's very, bushy in many ways. He just seems like he's got a lot of moss on him up on the shoulders, on the torso, and then you've got, all of this sort of foliage that runs throughout him, all this vine and trunk work that leads down to what are kind of like almost Groot feet, really. So he's very Swamp Thing-esque, and that's really what I'm getting out of this. He seems, not necessarily like a guy made out of moss in this instance when it comes to comparing to a vintage toy, but he seems like some sort of swamp creature or some sort of elemental, which I think works pretty well, especially if we're giving him kind of a tweak to design and making things a little bit different while still retaining a lot of what makes him tick. It's quite obviously the Moss Man for this new cartoon when you look at him, and I think for the most part they did a really good job here. He's not just Beast Man recolored anymore, and I do like that. So there's a lot of asymmetrical designs going on here with the various sort of leaves and vines that are sticking out and popping out all over the place, and I do like that personally. That always does it for me when it comes to a toy. He still gets a loincloth and a belt because, I don't know, man from the swamps needs that. The one area where I kind of am not the biggest fan of this figure is the head sculpt, unfortunately. And it's not because it's a bad head sculpt, it's because I wish he had a different head sculpt, really. I just don't necessarily like the expression. I love the lack of pupils. I like all the various colors and shading. He's got dark greens and medium tone greens and like the pea greens, and then you've got those super white blank eyes, which I always like, and then you've just got the open mouth. I think the open mouth is the one thing I wish he didn't have, just because it doesn't necessarily fit every situation. I'd rather him maybe be a little bit more stoic, hiding in the shadows, because he's supposed to be like the master of camouflage. So that would have been kind of just a different thing, because he doesn't come with an extra head sculpt. What you see is what you get. It is a nice head sculpt, though. I just prefer maybe a different expression, but it otherwise does top off a really cool looking figure. It is very different from what you might expect a Moss Man figure to be after having classics or vintage, but I think it works pretty well within the confines of this new line. And then as far as size comparisons go, here we go with an Origins figure on the left. Obviously, we don't have a Origins Moss Man yet, so we've got Trapjaw to stand in, and then we've got his Classics counterpart. And you can see that this is another instance of the overall build and style of the figure kind of playing a factor into exactly how big these guys are. Because our Classics figure is very much a normal Classics figure. So very broad-chested, very broad-shouldered, whereas our Revelation Masterverse figure is much more lean. Not super lean, he's very beefy, but at the same time he is a lot more leggy, and then he is not nearly as broad-shouldered as the Classics counterpart. And he's a little bit, of course, a little bit taller too. So he does have some size on him. He's definitely a bigger figure. So let's do some other stuff, of course, different brands, different licenses. So here he is with let's do a NECA Turtle. So something a little bit smaller, but another green guy for him. And then here he is with a G.I. Joe Classified figure. So here he is with Storm Shadow, so a more normal-ish 6-inch style figure, to give you a comparison between 6-inch and then, of course, more along a 5.5-ish inch figure. And then we're going to do a Mythic Legions, but I'm going to go a little bit of a different route. And here he is with a female Legions because, well, I've got her handy right now. So here he is with Delphina. And then we'll take Leo away and we will do... Let's do Boba Fett because he's been in rotation a lot for these as well, to give you an idea of what he looks like with a Black Series figure. So another 7-inch style figure. Of course, the Mythic Legions females do skew a little bit smaller. And then we've got a more normal 6-inch style Star Wars figure. So you can see that Moss Man does have some size to him. He is still not super beefy like we were used to in Classics, but he is a much larger figure, and of course that's going to scale through and through all throughout the figure compared to other more traditional 1/12 stuff. And then as far as accessories goes, what Moss Man has is honestly just a bunch of hands. He really just has hands, that's it. He has nothing else, but he has a lot of them. So in the box, we get gripping hands on him. Just standard gripping hands, although he doesn't have anything to grip, so that's one of my little pet peeves. It's not a huge deal. I'd rather him have fists, though, because he doesn't come with any fists. We do get some relaxed hands, so just kind of open palm hands, and the detail on these do look good. They're very much like sort of tree bark or actual, you know, like limbs from a tree, which of course make perfect sense because they are his extremities. And then we've got some open palm hands as well, so gripping, but not necessarily like these. They're more style pose, relaxed but open gripping hands. And then he's got this big guy here. So this is a humongous, like a tendril arm that is comprised of a bunch of branches and limbs. So this very much makes me think of like Evil Seed from the Club Grayskull line. And this just replaces his hand. So pop it out, and then we can pop this guy in. And it's pretty cool, but I do think it has one drawback to it in that it is super, super heavy. So it doesn't want to stay like fully, like it's going to sort of list downwards. So you have to pose it as such, and then it's definitely going to throw him off balance. So you'll have to, you know, sort of lean him back just a little bit, or get an ankle kind of rocked down slightly, you know, extend a leg backwards just to make him sort of have counterbalance on that. But it is a cool idea, and I do really like it. It actually shows off something of a power set for this guy when it comes to him being some sort of swamp creature or an elemental of some kind. So this very much works. I do like it. It's another, like, you know, Groot kind of thing almost. But it's a cool idea. The only thing that I wish was kind of attended to on this is that it wasn't so heavy. I don't know if it's possible to have truly made this thing hollow, but it is a heavy piece, and it definitely does weigh him down. And of course it sort of sags on the joint in there because it does have a hinge. So in that instance, I probably would have preferred it to just not have a hinge at all, because over time it's going to get super, super weak. But otherwise, it does look really cool. So overall, Mossman is a pretty solid figure. I do think he is going to be overshadowed entirely when it comes to this line because, well, we've got the two biggest of the heaviest hitters in this wave with He-Man and Skeletor. He-Man is, of course, kind of odd because he's probably not the best or even anything but the weakest figure in this particular wave, honestly, in a number of ways, so he's going to have his own controversy, and evil-lyn is going to overshadow everyone. Mossman's going to maybe kind of fly under the radar, I think. He is still a pretty cool figure. Sculpt is really nice. He is very unique. He is a new interpretation. He is a different take on a character that has been, you know, a big fuzzball for a really, really long time. And I know a lot of folks want that and expect that, but this, of course, is its own thing. I don't think it's any less of a figure because it's not flocked or that it's not scented either, but it does have a cool design, great sculpt, really good paint applications, and the only thing I truly wish was different is that he maybe had a more stoic expression, and that I wish they could have done something for the hinge on that tendril arm. Otherwise, I'm enjoying this one. So that's going to do it for this look at the Masters of the Universe Masterverse Revelation Mossman. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.